Welcome back. My name is Ken Thompson, and I'm a lay member of the Marshfield United Methodist Church. During this episode, I want to talk about Easter. You know, empty crosses, colored eggs, bunnies and baskets, white lilies and wide-brimmed hats. Have you ever wondered how all these traditions became intertwined in the way we celebrate Easter? What is Easter? What does it mean? And why does Easter keep moving to different days in March and April? Well, first and foremost, Easter is the English word for the annual celebration of the day Jesus was raised from the dead. The day Christians joyfully remember the defeat of sin and death by the resurrection of Jesus on the third day after he was executed by being hung on a cross. The accounts in the Bible tell us that Jesus died on the cross around 3 p.m. on the Friday of the Jewish Passover festival, and that the following day, known as the second day, was the Jewish Sabbath, which would have begun on that Friday at sunset. So as to not violate Jewish laws about doing work on the Sabbath, some followers of Jesus, mostly women, hurriedly placed Jesus' body in a tomb, intending to return after the Sabbath to anoint his body with spices and perfume. Sabbath would have ended on sundown on that Saturday, but since it would not have been acceptable for women to be in the cemetery after dark, the women waited until almost dawn on the third day, Sunday, to return to the tomb. And when they arrived back at the tomb, they discovered that it was empty. Jesus had been raised from the dead, just as he had been telling them would happen. But now those women understood. Hallelujah! He is risen. If it's been a while since you've read the Gospel writer's description of Easter, or if you've never read them, maybe this would be a good time to pause this video, get a Bible, and read Mark chapter 16, Matthew chapter 28, Luke chapter 24, and John chapter 20. They tell us that God loves you and me so much that he miraculously cleared the path so that we can be with him now and for all eternity. Jesus Christ is risen. Yet what those biblical accounts don't tell us is when to celebrate Easter. That's always been a puzzlement to me. My wife, ever the practical one in our partnership, says, well, why don't you just look at a calendar? True, but I want to know why Easter can be any Sunday between March 22nd and April 25th. The Sunday part I understand. It's in the Bible. The rest, not so much. In the first century, Christians began to celebrate the resurrection on the first Sunday after the first Saturday of Passover, the 8-day Jewish festival. But the Jewish calendar used to calculate the date of the beginning of Passover was a lunar calendar. That is, each month was based on the 29 plus days from one full moon to the next. Because the Hebrew people wanted Passover to begin on the first full moon of spring, they needed to create a part solar, part lunar calendar. And since the Greeks had devised the Metonic cycle, the Jewish leaders were able to do just that. Now, the Metonic cycle is beyond me. But basically, it's this thing predicated upon an approximation that every 19 years, 7 lunar months need to be added to the calendar, or intercalated. One each in years 3, 6, 8, 11, 14, 17, and 19 of the cycle, all in order to come close to reconciling the solar or tropical calendar with the lunar calendars. The first month of the Jewish calendar is Nisan, and by definition, the Jewish Paschal, or Passover, moon must fall on the 15th of Nisan, marking when Passover begins. The problem for Christians was that the Paschal moon was not always a full moon, and Passover did not always begin at sundown on a Friday. So after some years of struggle and lack of uniformity, the Council of Nicaea decided that Easter Sunday would be the first Sunday following the first full moon after the vernal equinox, that is the day of the year when the sun shines directly over the equator on its path northward in the northern hemisphere. But Since the astronomical vernal equinox in the northern hemisphere can be any day between March 19 and March 21, depending on one's time zone, the Council of Nicaea declared that March 21 would be the ecclesiastic date of the vernal equinox, and further declared that if both the vernal equinox and the full moon fell on the same Sunday, then Easter would be the next Sunday. Just to complicate matters, when the Western Church changed to the Gregorian calendar, but the Eastern Orthodox Church remained on the Julian calendar, then Eastern Orthodox Easter could fall any time between April 4 and May 8. So have you got all that? My wife was right again, wasn't she? Just look on a calendar or Google it. Actually, there is an ecumenical body meeting right now, including Roman Catholics, Eastern Orthodox, Anglicans, Lutherans, and other sects and denominations, trying to arrive at a uniform date for celebrating Easter, hoping to come to a conclusion so as to commemorate the 1700th year since the Council of Nicaea, which will take place in 2025. The current proposal is for the second or third Sunday of April. Strangely, in the year 2025, the two Easters, Western and Eastern, will coincide on April 20, a very rare occurrence. Even though the different sects of Christendom might someday agree on a date, they have not attempted to come to a universal name for the celebration. In both Greek and Latin, the Aramaic word for Passover, Pesach, is transliterated into Pascha, P-A-S-C-H-A. So the celebration of Christ's resurrection in Latin-influenced and in Greek-influenced languages is named for a derivative of Pascha. Pasqua in Italian, Pasqua in Spanish, Pâques in French, Pasque in Swedish, and also Pascha in the Eastern Orthodox Church. Perhaps you've heard of Jesus being referred to as the Paschal Lamb. Somehow the name became different in the Germanic world. Ostern in German and Easter in Anglo-Saxon, now English. The Anglo-Saxon 8th century historian, the Venerable Bede, wrote that the word came from a Teutonic goddess named Istra, who was credited with giving light to humans, for which she was punished. Now, Bede is the only source for that derivation. Almost all other scholars think that Easter comes from the Old English word meaning to shine. By the late 800s, the name and the celebration had become well established in England. After the Protestant Reformation in the 16th century, many sects and denominations abandoned the liturgy and traditions of Easter. The Puritans and Separatists or Pilgrims, including those who settled in New England, punished any celebration of Easter as it was not biblical. I've read that among the thousands of published sermons of John Wesley, many of which were about the resurrection of Jesus, there is not one specifically designated as an Easter Sunday sermon. The Anglican Church, in which John Wesley was ordained, maintained much of the traditional liturgical celebration of Easter, and Charles Wesley, John's brother, wrote special hymns for Easter, including Christ the Lord is risen today. The sunrise service is a North American Protestant addition to the Easter celebration, as it's the time that the women discovered the tomb of Jesus was empty. As Easter marked the end of Lenten fasting, for many Christians, a large meal usually followed worship. In the earliest days, lamb, eggs, cheese, yeast bread, and sweets were typically on the menu. All of those were foods which had been required to be given up for Lent. But as Christianity moved further away from Judaism, ham began to replace lamb as the meat of choice. While I don't remember much fasting during my childhood, I do remember, whether prepared by my mother or either of my grandmothers, the Easter dinner consists of ham, cheesy scalloped potatoes, green beans, asparagus, homemade rolls, and for dessert, a white cake with white icing sprinkled with, no, actually suffocated in coconut. For more than 5,000 years, probably originating in Mesopotamia, eggs have been symbols of death and rebirth and were decorated for spring festivals. The egg was very quickly viewed in the Christian community as a symbol of resurrection, with the shell representing Jesus' tomb. In the Eastern Orthodox tradition, the eggs are painted red at Easter to emphasizing the blood shed by Jesus during his torture and crucifixion. Martin Luther, in the 16th century, encouraged the decoration of Easter eggs and organized Easter egg hunts for the children. Fancily decorated eggs and egg-shaped confections became the rage during the Victorian era in England and quickly caught on in the United States. The ultimate decorated eggs, I suppose, were the jewel-encrusted enamel and china eggs by Fabergé in early 20th century Russia, just before the Revolution. After the Civil War in the United States, on the Monday after Easter, children would gather on the lawn of the United States Capitol to roll decorated eggs. This event became so popular, so widely attended, that some in Congress feared that their lawn was being destroyed. So in 1876, Congress passed and President Grant signed a bill banning Easter egg rolls or hunts on the Capitol lawn. Horrified by what she considered an insult to the children of America, Mrs. Rutherford B. Hayes, when she became First Lady, invited the children of the District of Columbia to come onto the White House lawn for an Easter egg hunt. This event, as an executive branch thumbing of its nose at the legislative branch, continues into this very day. Well, now back to Martin Luther in the 16th century. It seems he is the one who discovered that there is a bunny who delivers colored eggs and other treats to be placed in children's baskets or hidden in the yard. As Protestantism spread throughout the world, so did the Easter bunny. Well, except in parts of Switzerland, where it is cuckoo birds from the cuckoo clocks who miraculously disperse the decorated eggs and Swiss chocolate. And except in Australia, where rabbits are agricultural pests, so a long-eared bunny-sized marsupial called a bilby hides the decorated eggs. And then there is the uniquely American tradition of the Easter parade. Begun after the Civil War, as the super-rich of New York City would show off their finery in an after-church promenade down Fifth Avenue on Easter Sunday. The prominent feature of all the high-end couture were the women's hats, soon to be known as Easter bonnets. Wide-brimmed, festooned with fake flowers, fake fruit, and taxidermed animals, especially birds, wrapped in feathers and bows of every color and variety, each created to be the most extravagant in this unofficial competition. Of course, to prevent the exercise from being totally decadent, many of these socialites carried the flowers which had adorned their churches to a neighboring hospital. In 1875, Easter was of little commercial concern to people in America. But by 1900, the Easter parades and their requisite fancy accoutrements had become so popular that the retail clothing and milliners businesses made more money at Easter than at Christmas. In 1933, Irving Berlin wrote Easter Parade, and in 1947, more than 1 million people paraded down New York's Fifth Avenue. Alas, over the last 70 years, the parading spirit seems to have lost most of its allure. Nevertheless, there remains the Irish-American saying, for Christmas, food and drink, for Easter, new clothes. And then there is the Easter lily. Legend says that white lilies bloomed in the Garden of Gethsemane where Jesus prayed on the night that he was arrested. These flowers have symbolized purity, hope, and new beginnings since ancient times. Very early in the Christian churches, the white lily became a symbol of Jesus' resurrection. Lilies have been called the white apostles of hope. Mentioned many times in the Bible, the lily is perhaps described best by Jesus as recorded in Luke 12:27. Consider the lilies. Solomon in all of his glory was not arrayed like one of these. I have friends whose daughter is named Lily, and while I haven't seen much of Lily in the last several years, when she was a little girl, she would come bounding into my office, so full of joy, with such kindness and generosity, and so friendly. Now when I hear the word lily, I associate the Easter flower with this loving, giving, friendly child. The lily has become one of my favorite Easter traditions, a perfect symbol of the resurrected Jesus, loving, giving, and friendly. Happy Easter. He is risen.